Once I was established, the salary was sufficient to allow me to invest in a small Nissan Pulsar, which I purchased from a departing Tamil teacher. It flew down the well-paved road to the border, and we began to spend weekends in Bulawayo. Andrew and Lazina Sibanda, the couple that I had helped out with my credit card 2 years earlier, became good friends. Andrew was now teaching art at the Town Teacher Training College, spending his weeks as a bachelor and then racing to the border after classes to spend the weekend with his family. He had spent time in Tahiti and the United Kingdom, so his art was interesting and original, and he was a wonderful teacher. We began exploring Bulawayo under their advisement and soon discovered many favorite haunts for vacations, the top being two being Matopos National Park and the Chipangali Wildlife Refuge. Saradzai eventually showed up, bringing her infant daughter, Charlotte, down with her so she could take back twice the allowance when she returned to Zimbabwe. Even though the infant added to the burden of the goods she was carrying, see the steely determination to accomplish her dreams. She was training to become a nurse and was exchanging letters with Geraldine, her kind benefactor from Oxford. I hoped that one day they would meet. Tendai was definitely unhappy about her arrival, and she was even less impressed when I drove Saradzai and her belongings back to the Zimbabwean side of the border. In Francistown, we connected with a British couple, Don and Maeve Moore, who were also recently arrived in Botswana with two sons and a third on the way. Don and I connected over methodology. He was schooled in ESL language instruction, which was new to me. He was the only person on the planet whom I'd ever met who was a self-proclaimed Rochdale Football Club supporter. He played a better game of tennis than I did, and then we used to swim at the Francistown Club pool, as he had taken out a membership. Maeve managed to produce wonderful meals on Sunday afternoons with the simplest of ingredients, so that all tastes were catered for and everyone ate as much or as little as they wanted. We made our contributions, freshly purchased from the market, on our way over, and we became like an extended family. Owning a car and having friends with kids enabled us to share several adventures and made life very different from the experiences I had known as a single expatriate in rural Zimbabwe. In many ways, it was very gratifying, and we began to think seriously of owning a home in Africa. Tendai naturally wanted to learn to drive. She had visions of driving up to Bulawayo with electrical appliances, making a huge profit on the black market, and then buying lots of things like clothes and shoes. We started out by doing circuits around the baseball diamonds behind our home. The nets were embedded in cement blocks, and every time she rounded the corner to pass behind them, she would aim right at one of them. I was not a patient instructor and conceded that I might have raised my voice a couple of times. The lessons did not go well, and we never did get to the stage where she applied for her learner's license. There was also another distraction looming large in our lives, and I was asleep when it started. "My way!" Tendai screamed. I shot out of bed thinking snakes or something equally terrifying. There are times when it is important to be focused, especially when a baby is announcing its intention of taking over your life for the next couple or 3 decades. Tendai went into labor at 2:30 in the morning. I was completely befuddled as we headed off to the hospital, which was just the other side of the railway tracks from the school. It was only about a mile, in which time she managed several alarming utterances and facial contortions and the seizing of my nearest forearm in a vice-like grip. I left her in the car and ran through the hospital for about 15 minutes, trying to find someone, anyone really. There was no one in reception, no emergency staff in the emergency waiting room, not even cleaning staff to be seen. Desperate times breed desperate measures. I decided to explore and immediately took a wrong turn and found myself in a ward where an angry nurse came striding towards me with menace in her eyes. My wife is in labor and I need to get admitted. Didn't seem to have much effect on this seasoned veteran. What are you doing in my ward? She demanded. Get out! I tried again, but she was having nothing to do with it. Go to admissions. That was it. No helpful hints. I was heading back to the car when I met a traditionally built cleaning lady who spoke no English, and in the 8 months I had lived in Botswana, I had not mastered enough Setswana to be able to carry on a conversation about my wife needing attention to give birth. Thank God for those mime classes I took at university, because they came in very handy at this crucial juncture in my life. I was taken to a grill located under the main staircase, and a face appeared. Suffice to say that Tendai and I were ushered into a room, and I was given a form, thankfully in English, to fill out. However, before they would admit her to the hospital, I was required to pay some money. It was now somewhere between 3 and 4 a.m., and the banks in Botswana don't open until 10 a.m., so I was in a bit of a difficult spot. Tendai obliged by making a lot of noise, and her water broke, so she was hustled off somewhere. As a male, I was not allowed to follow. At around 7 a.m., I was able to join her in a waiting room where I held her hand and did my best to comfort her. Luckily, our doctor, who was Dutch and spoke several languages fluently, showed up and gave her a quick examination. I asked if it would be possible for me to be with her in the delivery room. He assured me that it was, but he also mentioned that Botswana men weren't generally accepted in there and I might encounter some hostility, but it really was okay. At 9 a.m., I was summoned to an inner office. I hear you are refusing to pay. I was being interrogated by the deputy administrator of the hospital. This was taking place after a mostly sleepless night, and my wife in another room about to give birth to our firstborn. She was alone, there were no relatives nearby, and so she was really rather scared and isolated. I was a bit snappy when I replied, I am not refusing to pay. I have no cash on me right now, and I have to wait for the banks to open. They will open in 1 hour, and when they are, I will go and get your money. It is not my money. The money belongs to the government of Botswana. What are you saying? It was more of a challenge than a question. I'm simply saying, Ma, that I am not refusing to pay. It's just that I can't pay until the banks open. I might have said this rather loudly, and it was not helping. I could see her thinking, Colonial Master clearly needs to be put in his place. I'm sorry, Ma. I explained this when we came in at 3 o'clock this morning. As soon as I can get to the bank, I will do so. It's not a problem. It has been a long night so far, and the baby is due at any time now. The alpha female hair subsided a touch, and then she directed my attention to the form. She pointed out that I had filled every line in the form from above. In Botswana, the forms were arranged in such a manner that one filled them under the line. You are a teacher? She queried. An English teacher at Mataspe? What a fool. He cannot even follow instructions that are clearly written in his own language, and we have allowed him to teach our children. She mulled the thought over and decided she had better things to do than to torment this deluded foreigner. Do you want a private room or a ward? Oh, what's the difference? A private room is 60 pula per day, and the ward is 25. I responded, and she wrote on the form. Visiting hours in the ward are from 6 to 7 p.m., and it is for women only. But I'm her only relative in Botswana. Then you need a private room. Please fill this form out again, and do it properly this time. I cannot keep wasting paper. All this time I was wondering what was happening to Tendai, and I wanted to get back to her. After about 45 minutes, I was allowed to leave the office and was about to head into town to fetch some money when I noticed that the room where Tendai had been waiting was now eerily quiet. I warily pushed the door open and found the room empty. I heard a familiar scream nearby, looked into the adjoining operating theatre through the small window and hurried inside. The nurse was not happy to see me, but I brushed her concerns aside, stating that Dr. Neufeld said I could be present. Tendai was on her back on what looked like a stainless steel washboard, with her feet in some raised metal stirrups. The midwife was like something out of a Grimm's fairy story. I knew that the Motswana women were castigated if they uttered even the smallest sound, grin and bear it, or else. Tendai was having none of it and was in operatic full throat. Come on, push! You are killing the baby! These were hardly the words of encouragement that either of us needed to hear at this point, and for the first time I became suddenly aware of what life could hold if Tendai died in childbirth. It was a very scary place. Richie was hesitating about coming out. Neufeld was hurriedly recalled, and after what seemed an eternity, since the midwife had conjured visions of the hereafter, he arrived and performed an episiotomy. They are awful things, and watching it was like watching a butcher cut up a slab of beef with a pair of heavy-duty scissors. Tendai was eventually stitched back together, and I was allowed to hold my son, at least until the administrator found me and ordered me to the bank. I returned and dealt with the money issues, and then asked where Tendai and our son were, only to be told that I could not see her until 6 p.m. They had put her in the public ward. I was absolutely exhausted by this time and decided to go home to sleep, but before leaving did show them the receipt for the private room. God smiled, and when I came back in the evening, she was in a semi-private ward, and I got hold of Richard Tatenda Garford, got two hold in my arms. Tatenda is Shona and means we thank you. I was in love. Tendai was in pain, and I suspected she would never forgive me for what I had put her through. Mr. Chakalisa could not understand why I had not been teaching that day and told me off. 2 weeks later, Maeve gave birth to a daughter in the same hospital, though she had the good sense to deliver it in the middle of the day.